we have to look at the behavior, but we really have to understand the person and what's going on with the person.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I love him.
I'm going to look into him. I wrote it
Yeah,
down.
he's fantastic.
I like listening to Dan Savage too. Have you heard?
Yeah. I've been looking up his stuff.
He's a little crass, but I've learned a lot from him. And I think he's gone on speaking tours with Esther Perel too. And
oh, cool.
Yeah, his stuff is fun, but he's like, sometimes he's just like, he's got one chapter in his book where he's like, okay, well then just fucking cheat. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But it's like after you've exhausted every other potential idea and you have these sexual fantasies or urges that you think you need to satisfy, and like breaks down just like step by step how to do it. And I'm like, this is
Does he recommend talking to your partner first?
This is after, yes, you've exhausted all potential with your partner, and your partner is just like, no. And I remember reading about that and talking about it with my husband. And I was just like, is there not a boundary though? Like, you know, and it just makes you think. And if some people are like that, cool. But if there's a boundary is there a boundary? Because like sometimes I worry about people who are like, have like really crazy sex ideas. And I'm like, I want to tell you to like creatively embrace everything, but there's a boundary. You have to draw a line.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we can't go this whole route of like, nothing is immoral, because like
no, there are boundaries for sure. But
I like how just his crassness just makes me think about that. And I think it's helpful to go, okay, well, I'm willing to push my boundaries back, but I'm still willing to have boundaries.
No, and it's good conversation, right?
Yes.
I mean, if we're not willing to at least you don't have to change your boundary, but let's talk about it. And then you always still come back to what you're comfortable with and what lines up with your own values, right? But it's great to just talk about it. That's why I love what you do, because it just brings up such great conversation where people are not having these conversations because they're taboo or they're shame or whatever. And no, let's just talk. It's okay. It's okay. Let's explore all these great ideas that are out there.
And when you sent me that email after you had read my blog, I was just like, I'm so happy someone gets it, because I think, and I say this only based on my own experience, but it seems like women have a much harder time even talking to other women about it. But men are like, I saw your article. I have all these issues. Help me. And no joke, I have so many people that are like, can you help me? And I'm like, I will try. But it's men. It's like men are so willing to be vulnerable and share their stories and their traumas and their experiences. And I'm like, what is going on here? That should be like the women's shtick. Like, we're the storytellers.
Well, I wonder if it's so much of society and culture and family upbringing that really have trained women, whether it's overt or covert, to, you know, just kind of live in this, whether it's a stereotype or girls don't talk about these things, or to explore these ideas is not ladylike, it's inappropriate, it's shameful, it means you're a slut, you know, like all these things, when it's like, no, like women have desires and women have fantasies and women have needs. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, women do have needs. You know, what's funny is my son was visiting, and so my two older kids are 28 and 18, and I walk in, they're just talking in my daughter's room, and I walk in and he's like, yeah, I got your hoe gene, Mom. And I went, what? What? I said, you're not a virgin anymore? And he's like, no. Like, I got yours and Dad's like whoring gene. And I'm like, not sure what you mean by that. Explain. And my daughter's like, you know, because you were a hoe. And I'm like, I wasn't though. Like, I was just curious. I said I was very sexually curious. Yeah, otherwise known as a hoe. And I'm like, no, but I was like, there was always a meaning. Either it was for my pleasure, it was for my curiosity, it was to connect. And I'm like, stop looking at it like that. Like,
there have to be these labels. And
why do we look down on people? Because I'm like, you know what? I am seasoned, baby. Thank you. you know? And I thought I was seasoned too, but then my husband came along and showed me I really wasn't. But that was my thing. I didn't want to have a boring sex life.
No.
I knew that before I had my period, I was not going to have a boring life, period.
Huh,
But
huh.
my parents were sex freaks. So, and nothing inappropriate, but we just knew they were curious and they were exploring
Yeah,
and they were trying to understand our
yeah.
bodies and what this stuff means. And no
See,
way.
there's definitely, that is so rare. That
Yeah.
is so rare, I have to tell you.
I know, I hear that a lot, and I just don't get it. That was my
Oh, like,
normalcy. Seeing my
no.
parents not be able to keep their hands off of each other and kissing all the
Yeah.
time,
See?
and touch was so big in our house, and caressing and holding and embracing and tickling and cuddling, and we do that too. And my husband said the same thing. He's like, "This is so weird." He's like, "Kissing in public, holding hands. What is this?" And I'm like, "This is
Yeah.
how I roll. This is what we do." And I just, yeah, the more people I meet in here, they're like, "What? You do that?" I mean,
So
his own.
how were you? I'm just so curious because since they were so affectionate and open, and this is all just natural and healthy, how did you first learn about sex, like intercourse, and where babies come from? Like,
Um,
how did you learn that?
well, I think I learned before they were ready to teach me. I think I walked in on them having sex when I was like 3 or
Okay,
4. And,
okay. And how did they react?
uh,
Because that's huge.
well, my dad was like, "Crap, she's in here." And then my mom came after they were done. I went back to my room. I was just like, "What the hell did I just see?" I heard my dad barking. I was confused. I heard my dad barking. And, yeah. And my mom came in and she's like, "You good? Are you okay? Like, do you want to talk?" And I was like, "What did I just see?" And she told me, she said, when two people are in love, this is some of the things that they do. And then throughout the years, I was so curious, and my uncles and my grandfathers all had Playboys or penthouses or whatever. My parents had their sex chest. I was nosy. They had dirty playing cards for when the adults came over. Um,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
was just always curious and looked at stuff, but my mom always talked to me about it.
See, that's
And
so
she
great.
differentiated like these playing cards, and they're just regular playing cards that you play poker with, but they had graphic images on them.
Uh-huh.
It was like Penthouse. And, she said, and I was like 6, 7 years old. And she said, "This isn't love. This is sex. And this doesn't mean
Oh,
anything.
that's
And this
so
is for
interesting.
fun." And she wanted me to know the difference. And she said, "What mom and dad do is love, and it's private. And when you're older, you'll understand it and you'll want it." And she never told me sex was going to hurt. She never told me it was dirty. She just always said, "You're not ready yet. And I know you're curious." And I mean, MTV came out when I was growing up, and you had George Michael and Michael Jackson and Prince,
Sure.
especially. My parents loved
So
him. So
sexual.
like,
Yes.
how do
Yes.
we talk about this? And they
Yes.
just always answered every question. I'm more so my mom than my dad. My dad would be like, "I can't believe we're having this discussion right now." But he always like, just was willing to talk too. And okay. And they shared all their stories from growing up. And I knew my mom and dad were both sexually curious growing up. And they told me about all the drugs they did. So when I got older, I was like, "I ain't touching that. I know about that. I heard about that. I'm not doing that. No, 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 no." And so they were just always open. But that was the one thing my mom always wanted me to know was there's a difference between sex and love.
That is
And
beautiful.
and then
Yes.
we, growing up watching Oprah and Ellen and Sally
Yes.
Jesse Raphael and
Yeah.
talking about the difference between objectifying women and appreciating women. And yeah, I just always knew that. And masturbation, when I got caught, I think I was humping a stuffed animal when I was younger. My mom was like, "This is cool. This is good. This is fine. You're exploring yourself. Just don't do it in the living room in front of all of us. Go do it in your bedroom. This is a
Yeah.
private moment." And it was not, and she didn't shame me. And I mean, when my boys were growing up too, all of them as they're aging, I have to be like, "Can you go be curious like that in your room? Thank you."
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
"Don't do that right now." Or, but it's never
Yeah.
about, she just never shamed me. And I think
So
because she
again, the
was.
boundaries without the shame, right?
Right. And I
Yeah.
think it was because she was shamed growing up. Or I don't even know if she
Sure.
was shamed. It was just there was silence. No one ever talked about anything. And
Which kind of alludes to shame.
Yeah. Well,
You
basically,
know,
because
and I love the book, what we were just talking about, The Erotic Mind, because even he says, and Freud said, you know, that children are sexual beings.
so sexual.
Children from like starting at age 3,
Yes.
right, are
Yeah.
curious. And for you to say, you know, I was sexually curious, you just talk about that in mainstream, and there's so much shame about being sexually curious.
Yeah.
We are wired this way. God
Yes.
created us to be curious.
And the thing is even though our children are sexually curious, they have no idea the
They don't know
context or the
how to
lenses that we
handle it.
know.
No,
And
they don't
so
know how to
they don't think
manage that.
it's
Right.
bad or anything. And they don't have any of the impressions that we have from society. And that's the one thing that I have to struggle with too, is like, we make comments in the house, like with the older kids or with my husband. And, you know, if we say something that kind of sounds, it could go either way. Someone will say, that's what she said, you know,
Right. Right.
drop
We
a
do
little
that all the
funny
time.
line. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the little kids don't know what that means, but they know it's
Right.
funny because they don't have the hypersexualized or objectified sexual view. And we are very
Mm.
open about obviously I'm open about talking about sex in front of my kids, you know, it's what I do.
Right.
Um, but they don't have the impressions we do. And I understand why we get like, oh, don't say that word here. They don't know what we're talking about. And
Yeah.
we're the ones that can form the impression on what we are talking about. So if we do, they're going to hear
Yeah.
that word every time going forward and go, that's a bad thing. And we
Right.
program them to do that. And we don't even realize it. We're like, don't
Right.
talk about that in front of the kids. The kids shouldn't have even seen that scene in the show. And I'm like that. But now I'm like, I'm not going to run and pause and fast forward the show anymore. I'm going to see how
Right.
they react, because if I react like, they're going to do the same thing, and they're either
Right.
going to close up from it, or they're going to go, why did mom react like that? Now I'm curious, and I'm going to go dig around, and then they're going to not have my conversation in context to explain what they're seeing. So we have to
Right.
be really, really careful, I think, about
But
how we
again,
do.
that's rare. The way you're doing it is
I
extremely
know.
rare.
I know. It's so
Yeah.
sad.
I'm so glad you're doing it that way, though.
Well, that's what it's for. It's for the children, really. It really is. Really is. I mean, because I know I did it wrong, because my daughter, and I don't regret anything. But my daughter had a child at a young age. You know, she's almost got a 1-year-old now, and I'm like, I didn't talk to her enough about it
Yeah.
because she wasn't
Yeah.
ready. And now she's open. You know,
Sure.
and she's even like, "Do you have anal sex, mom? And can we have this discussion?" And I'm like, oh, "I love you. Yes,
Yeah.
please. This is what I want." You know, and
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever it is, just talk about it. Don't be grossed out about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah,
Leave those doors open without the shame. Shame's a killer.
it is.
Just a killer. So
Yeah.
what questions should we do for Ask Dr. G?
Oh, I want to know how you address when people come to you about issues related to porn. My husband watches
Okay.
porn. I want him to stop. What do you say to something like that?
Well, and I just referred you to Joe Court, who is like, this is a lot of what his podcasts are about, and I've learned so much from listening to him. And is it Daniel Lay or David Lay? Do you know who I'm talking about?
I'm not familiar.
It's either David or Daniel Lay, who has like done a lot of research to kind of counter the research that's out there that says that porn is automatically a bad thing and causes
Mm,
damage to your brain and all these things. And so he's done a lot of work, and I have his book too, that that pornography does not necessarily mean a sex addiction. So when someone comes to me about pornography, we have to explore it. You
mm,
know, how does it make them feel? What are the belief system around pornography? What is the pornography behavior? Like, I did have a client who said her husband was watching porn, you know, masturbating daily, was like having sex with strange people. Like, he would
mm,
just kind of contact people and go to their homes and have sex with strangers. So there was a lot of behavior that was obviously very hurtful to their relationship, to her sense of trust, safety, monogamy. I mean, she wanted a monogamous relationship. They did not talk and have any kind of agreement that it was not going to be monogamous. So there's just so much to explore without like immediately assuming it's a sex addiction and the person needs to go to 12-step and abstain from sex and masturbation. That is not my first, second, or third approach.
Yeah.
There's so much needs to be explored and understood, because I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing. Now, with that said, I had a 15-year-old in my office recently who is under a tremendous amount of stress. Like, the family is just imploding. And so when I said to her, so sweetie, like, how are you coping with all this anxiety and stress? And she said, I'm watching porn. I was like, whoa, right? So I was like, okay. And we've worked on and off with each other for probably a couple of years now. So she knows me, she knows my style. So I said to her, well, let me just kind of tell you where I'm coming from regarding porn. She's a Christian. She goes to youth group. She's told her youth group leader, and she goes to a special group for kids who are struggling with porn. And I said, I don't approach porn your typical way, as a lot of Christians do. She goes, oh, Lesley, don't worry about it. I know. she's like, I know you don't approach. She goes, I know you. And she's 15. She's so cute. She's like, I know you don't approach it that way. I'm like, okay, good. Now from there, tell me what you're watching. Like, what is it that you are gravitating towards? Because let's understand what's going on here. Well, as it turned out, her porn was just R-rated movies. And maybe I shouldn't even say just. We're so desensitized, right? We're so desensitized to the sex scenes in these movies that's not pornography, maybe to you or I.
Yeah.
But to her, it was. And
Wow.
so there were just certain scenes in certain R-rated movies that she would just kind of keep going back to just kind of escape.
Wow.
And escape the stress of her family. So, so my approach with her is, again, to just understand that that's an option for her. That's always going to be an option for her. I'm not going to be like the movie police at her house and tell her, like, don't watch R-rated movies. Like, that's just not realistic. But what else can she do to manage her anxiety and her stress? Whenever we act out in a way where we're just avoiding, suppressing, numbing out, then anything could potentially be damaging to us. I don't care. It could be chewing gum. It could be watching Netflix. It's, anything where we're just avoiding life.
Yeah.
And so I want to help her understand her anxiety, normalize it. Absolutely. I mean, this poor kid is just like, it's very sad what the whole family is going through, and it's just very scary. Now, what else can she do to manage the anxiety? So that's how I approach it.
That's good.
And same thing with a husband and a wife, or whatever, any kind of relationship where someone's coming in and automatically making these assumptions that pornography is bad.
Yeah, I'm a defender of porn, and it is I'm so interested in looking up this person, though, with this new research, because I've always felt that too. And I know a lot of people who consume porn the same way they would cannabis, once in a while, because it makes them feel good or gets them in the mood. And I think we've taken this idea that the typical porn watcher looks like something and behaves like someone. And I'm over here like, but I like porn.
Right.
Like, what does that say about me? Like, I like porn. Well, why do you like porn would be the next question. Well, I like it because it helps me get in the mood sometimes when I can't get in the mood, or I explore what I'm curious about. What am I curious about looking at? And am I curious about experiencing that for myself? But I think, and my husband says it too, sometimes just masturbating helps you go to bed, and you want some kind of an image that is sexual, that is not something you're fantasizing about for the rest of your life, but just something that visually stimulates you so you can go to sleep. And I'm like, I can relate to that. Like, sometimes I need a melatonin.
Right.
Personally, masturbating before bed is too much work, but I'm not going to.
Yeah.
But I understand that, because there is science behind that too. I mean, there is a release of chemicals, of melatonin chemicals that will help you go to sleep. That's why sex practice is good for restabilizing a sleep practice, like especially when
Hmm.
you've been dealing with insomnia. I think a lot of insomniacs, I always think, go have sex.
Go ahead.
You're going at night. Um, but I think there's a lot of benefit to porn. I think it helps couples explore other ideas and just explore their own fantasies in their minds. And that can do so much for just creating a new connection,
So,
especially when we're disconnected.
well, and so it is, by the way, just so you know, it is David Ley,
Okay.
Ley. Yeah. But I think what, so many women typically struggle with, and again, this is just a generalization, is comparing themselves to the women
Oh, yeah.
in the movies that their husbands are watching, and then it
Yeah.
makes them feel insecure about themselves, and why isn't he having sex with me? And they're
Yeah.
not seeing anything positive come from it at all. So how do you not get wrapped up in that? How do you I guess not get jealous or insecure, right? Because I think that's what comes up for so many women.
Yeah. And I used to, back when I was doing the whole church thing and trying to be a godly woman. I used to be like, so you're fantasizing about her. You're wishing that was me. You wish I looked like that. I can't look like that. And a lot of that was just for me. I grew up loving myself and my body, but after I had children, I couldn't love myself again. I like hated my body, and I was like,
Oh, yeah.
I just couldn't get over it. And it wasn't until I met my husband, who was just like, I don't know. He just had a way of, every time he looked at me, made me feel like I was the only woman in the world.
Yeah.
And I did resent my body even after the twins too. And he was like, you're amazing. Your body is
Oh,
like the amazing things your body does. And
yeah.
he said something to me too. He's like, I don't see like your body. He's like, I see your soul. I see your spirit. I see your
Oh,
essence. And I
yeah.
think that's what we're called to see in each other. And not
Sure.
only that, but we have to remember, we want beautiful features. We want everything aesthetically pleasing whenever we're
Right.
Netflixing, whenever we're watching our advertisements, whatever it is. And so I don't understand how we're not jealous and envious of just everything we're watching, and why we compartmentalize that. But I think a lot of that is because we've always covered ourselves up. Ooh, oops, unplugged the mic there. We've always kind of covered ourselves up. And it's hard for us to kind of reveal ourselves to even our spouses. I think maybe
Hmm.
because that programming goes further. I think we do probably, I don't know, um, project outward on all the other shows we watch too. So I shouldn't say that. But I had to come to a point where I really loved my body. And it literally meant looking at myself naked in front of the mirror and touching myself and realizing what every part of my flesh has done, not only for me, but I've created things because of this flesh. And I had to have a get with me moment and just, I love you. I love you. I love you. And my
Yes.
husband is
Yes.
also very encouraging. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I think we think too much about stretch marks and cellulite and whatever. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
my belly rolls over and I've got like 4 folds right now because I'm sitting. That's everybody. The people you
Yeah.
see out there are paid to look that good
Sure.
or paid to look that good. And that's not real to me. I don't know. Just for me, I know that's not real. That's not real
Right.
life. And that would be stressful and a burden for me to have to think that that
Sure.
is what we're supposed to be. So I think sometimes we just have to get to that point where we're like, that's fake. And what
But
we have in our
what you're
homes.
also describing is just you're secure within yourself.
Yes, finally. Yes. And
Yeah.
sometimes it takes a long time for people, but we do. And I recommend that. I think after Eat, Pray, Love, I don't know what it was. She learned how to love herself again throughout that journey.
Hmm.
And I came across some exercise of literally sitting in front of the mirror and finding
Yes.
something to love about yourself. And
Yeah.
Emily Nagoski, who wrote Come As You Are, she
Mm,
also expands on that method. And she's like, just start with one thing every day, then
right.
move to 3 things, then move to 10 things, then sit there and
Yeah.
don't stop until you can love every inch of your skin. And you get there because
Wow. Wow.
that's all that matters. And God made you in that image. And I don't
Right.
know.
Right.
For me, I'm like, these are our temples. So we are supposed
Yeah.
to love them.
Yeah.
And when we learn to love our own bodies, then we can show others how to love our bodies too. And that's even
Yeah.
better. It's
I
like
like
a
that.
benefit from that.
Yeah. I like that. I'm gonna write that
Oh,
down.
I like
I'm gonna quote you in a post. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think that's why I I kind of lean towards these post-Christian, post-evangelical, post-deconstruction circles, because I
Yeah.
know that we have to start peeling stuff back.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate starting with the religion, but I think there's an error when we don't take it to the erotic too. You know what I mean? Like, people are like, I deconstructed my religion. Okay, next. Keep moving. No, I'm done. No, you're not. No, I'm going to reconstruct my religion. We got to keep going. We got to deconstruct all the dimensions of who we think
Yeah.
we are
Yeah.
as our identity. And I don't know,
Yeah.
there's just so much I wish that people would be willing to explore about the erotic self. We talk about the authentic self and the true self. And I'm like, and the erotic self.
But that's been pathologized. So
It
that's why
has.
we don't go there, right?
Yeah.
Anything with the word erotic in it, all of it, you immediately assume it's sinful.
Yeah. I
Or there's
hate
a or
that.
pathologize. Sorry, why am I saying that? Anyway,
Pathologize.
pathologize. And so, like, that's a shame, right? That's
Yeah.
been just immediately those assumptions are made when we just say the word erotic.
Yes. I know. It's like, what was it? I was playing with my grandson and I was tickling him, and I don't know, something just popped into my head and I was like, this is eros. Like, eros is a fleshy
Mm,
love. It's
yeah.
not it's not just sex. It's a
No.
fleshy love. It's like understanding there excuse me, there's a connection between my touch to somebody's skin. And you know, it's
Right.
fascinating. I just read this too. Our skin is literally dead. It's dead.
Yes. Yes.
Everything on the surface is dead. The only time we understand to feel sensation is when the dead is touched. And I'm like, there's a key there. Like, there's a
Oh,
real
yeah.
key there. But even just touching and cuddling and tickling, like my grandson and my kids, I'm like, that is erotic. It's the flesh connection that creates a sensation of goodness. It's
Absolutely. And there's
eroticism isn't
nothing
just right. And eroticism is not
Yes,
just
there's nothing
sexual
bad about that.
sensation. Yeah. And that's, I think,
Mm-mm.
where it really needs to start. We need to unpack what we need to deconstruct eros and eroticism. We need to unpack it and peel it away and get rid of all of these negative layers that are just
Mhm.
calcifying and killing the potential. I said this to my friend the other day. I was like, they have made sex such a dirty, shameful, taboo thing because they know if we were all having sex and we were all just more interested in physical touch and connection, we wouldn't be pissed off about half of the things that we're pissed off about. Like,
Yeah.
this hunger and desire that we have towards the next new thing for me to be outraged. I'm like, why are we not putting that energy towards our partners, and not even just
Mhm.
the sexual energy, but why are we not putting like more
Just
focus on
relational. Yeah.
what's relational and intimate and in our
Yeah.
own house?
Right.
And we're like, we all think we need to be advocates and social justice warriors. I'm like, but what does your house look like? Why can't we go back to that? A house divided cannot stand.
Right.
What does your house look like? I don't care what you're trying to do for the world. If you can't do it in your house, you
So
can't do it
true.
anywhere else.
So true. So
And
true.
that's eroticism.
Right.
Intimacy is eroticism, and making sure your most foundational relationships are secure.
Yeah.
And we're
Yeah.
not
I
doing.
agree.
So now we're hung up on politics and not the erotic, and it's frustrating.
I know. And
So
coronavirus.
and coronavirus. If you have more sex, you don't have to worry about the coronavirus because
There
sex
you go.
boosts your immunities. So there. Also heard cannabis can boost your immunities. So get high, get laid,
have sex,
don't worry about the
and don't worry
coronavirus,
about it. Yeah.
and drink Heineken if you're really worried. No, because I see people are boycotting Corona beer, and
Yeah,
it's
there you go.
hilarious.
That's so funny.
So, okay, how do you tell when someone comes into you and is like, we're just having a boring sex life and we don't know what to
Mhm,
do?
mhm.
What's your first recommendation?
Well, before I recommend, I want history. I want to know,
Oh, we're
you
gonna go
know,
make it complex now.
I
Okay.
am gonna make it complex. Well, because nothing is just a quick fix,
Okay,
that's the thing.
let me give you a synopsis then. How about a couple that is just hovering on the sidelines of understanding what is deconstruction? And someone called me a heretic, and my church is looking at me funny because I'm doing this. And they're in the position where they feel like they're comfortable to start peeling stuff away. Would
Hmm.
you would you just kind of just read them to see how far you can push them right away without too much? Or are you more like, I need to make sure I'm good about this and I've developed a connection with them? I just always wonder that because in shows, which are obviously fictional, someone comes in and they're like, have you tried a threesome? And they just kind of jump into it and shock them.
Yeah.
So do you ever go that route, or do you want to make sure that you know what their traumas are, and just so
Yeah.
people
I mean,
know
I
what
want
kind
that
of
history.
Dr.
I
G
want
you
that
are? Okay,
relationship.
good.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely want the safety in the room for sure. And if it's someone that I've been seeing for a while and then they bring up these issues, then I can shock them, right?
Yeah.
Then I can go right into, well, do you masturbate? Do you mutually, like, I can jump right in. But if it's a brand new person and this is what they're coming to me for the very first time, then I want them to know me. I want to know them and just create the safety so that we can explore those deeper layers in a way that's safe and is not going to send them, running away. So it just always depends on the relationship and the energy between us
Yeah. Have you
and how
ever
far I can go. Well,
you ever have you ever counseled people who have entered into a polyamorous relationship?
yes.
And what does that look like? How they entered into it while seeing you or before you and then came to see you?
Before.
Really?
Yeah.
And
And yeah. And so that wasn't the reason. I
yeah.
was seeing the wife. And so I wasn't seeing them as a couple. Um, and they actually saw a different sex therapist for those issues. But she's certainly, there were a lot of issues around that issue for her. And so she really shared a lot about what that was like for them
Yeah.
and things that they would communicate about and what the boundaries, they were trying to figure out the boundaries.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
he really wanted her to be able to do things that, she wasn't really comfortable with and things like that. So it was also like, it was polyamorous, but there was also some kink in there too. So like he
mm,
wanted her to, be with another man and film it and then send him the film, things like that.
hmm.
There was a kink where this husband wanted her to like talk down to him and really humiliate him. So there were things like that in the relationship that she struggled with, and so we
Yeah.
would explore that. Yeah.
Huh. Do you know how they're doing, if they're still
I
working?
don't.
No,
Yeah,
no
I
sex
don't.
again?
Yeah, I don't know. That
I
was a
have
few
been
years ago.
very curious about polyamorous relationships as of like
Yeah.
I'd say the last year, because I got to know somebody a little bit who was in one,
Hmm.
and he actually wasn't a participant yet. Like, it was his wife was developing this relationship with another man.
Hmm.
He wasn't going to have a sexual relationship with that other man. And I was just like, well, how do you do that? Like, how do you
Yeah.
have your wife have two relationships with another man? And, of course, that made me and my husband curious. And so we've been talking about it and just kind of asking the questions like, what would that be like? And, how do you, we have younger children too. So just as like just
Yeah.
fantasizing out loud, it would be like, hi, this is mommy's new boyfriend or daddy's new girlfriend. And I just always just honestly, people who are in like thruples and polyamorous relationships,
Yeah.
or even open relationships, I just think that is a boundary that is so intriguing. It
Hmm.
like calls me outward. Like that might be something I don't even know. I'm going to have a bunch of listeners going, you crazy girl. But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just, sometimes I feel like, I don't know where I'm at with just exploring love and connection and how it works.
Hmm.
If you're that comfortable and that trusting in a relationship, there's a lot of even theology behind the idea that you're supposed to share that love. You don't
Hmm.
just keep it exclusionary. And I've
Right.
heard a lot of arguments from more queer feminist theology that suggests that's just kind of the way of life, or that's what heaven would be like anyway. And
Oh, interesting.
it's just kind of fun to just think about and see yourself and wonder if you could do something like that. But not even that. You don't actually have to act on a lot of things that you talk about, because the talking itself is like
Is
an
stimulating.
aphrodisiac.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the
Just
jealousy can
even
be too.
talking about it. Yes. And I love that again in the erotic mind book where he talks about like struggle or obstacles
Yes.
create that in more that sexual tension and
Yeah.
intensity that just creates a better sexual interaction and experience, right? When
Yeah.
you have these obstacles. And so even talking about these things can create those obstacles and then
Yeah.
intensify your sexual relationship.
Yeah. I love that part. And what he talks about
Yeah.
the shadow of the third too, doesn't he?
I haven't gotten to that
Is
part.
that I might be confusing him with someone else. No, I think that's what it was. Um, and what that made me more comfortable with was fantasizing and verbalizing out loud a potential third,
Mm-hmm.
is because there's this idea that when there are two connected and having sex, there's still always a third. And some people will say that's God. But for a lot of other people, it's just whatever you're fantasizing to keep your arousal, right? Like, and
Right,
sometimes women
right,
will be like, sometimes I just imagine I'm under a waterfall or whatever it is.
right, right.
And so there's this power of this third force within you. And I mean, from the Trinitarian standpoint, two becoming one, but there's actually three because God is that ultimate connection. It's
Right.
kind of fun to give that third or that shadow a face or a
Mm-hmm.
name or an identity within the connection. I might be speaking from experience and just pretending, but it does boost for us, it like makes us want sex more with each other.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
it just makes it more exciting. We're able to
Mm-hmm.
verbalize and visualize without stepping outside of our house, and taking a deeper risk. And you can act out a lot of, I think, maybe fears that you've had from past relationships or
For
triggers
sure.
or traumas that
But
way.
again, what I love what you're saying is, and this goes for anyone who might have more of these out of the box or whatever society has deemed appropriate, anything outside of that really teeny tiny box,
Very tiny.
very teeny tiny box, that you and your husband talk about these things and there's
Yes.
no shame. And that is the key.
Yeah.
And so many couples that I work with don't talk about sex.
I know.
They don't talk about what they like. They don't talk about what they don't like. They don't say harder, softer, faster. Please do that again. Please don't ever do that again. Please,
Yes.
like, there's just no communication.
I know. I
And
know.
it's so
Mm.
sad. And that's where I do shock people, because then I'll come right out and say, like, well, have you tried this? Have you gone to a sex shop together? Have you done like,
Yeah.
come on, guys, let's start swinging from the ceiling. Let's do this, right? And it just shocks people, but I'm like, let's talk about it. It's okay.
Yes. I love that. Yeah. You know what? I've had a lot of friends one woman, she shocked the hell out of me. She's like, I don't like oral sex. I'm like, oh, you don't like giving your husband head. I get that. No, I don't want a tongue down there. That's gross. And I'm like, what? And no joke. And her husband wants to do it so bad, but she won't let him. And I'm like, what the hell's the
Maybe
matter with
she's never
you?
had it done
She's
well.
like, well, he doesn't know how to do it. And I'm like, well, have you told him how you like it? No.
Exactly. Oh, girl.
My husband likes to do a few things on me too. And the other night I finally went, I know you like it. I know you do, but I don't like it. And I've been letting you do it, but don't do it. Please just no more. And he was like, well, thank you for letting me do it for as long as I wanted to. Okay. And that's okay. That's your spouse.
Right.
Like do you
Right.
not
Come
bitch at them
on.
50 times a day? Like, I've asked you to bring that damn garbage out. Then tell him, I said clockwise, not counterclockwise. That is okay. You can say, get the oil, get the
Right.
KY, get the
Right.
lube. You can
Right.
say those things. You can say,
Yes.
you know what? Turn around. This isn't working for me. Or,
Yeah.
and sometimes I'm a little picky. I'll be like, go shave. It's too stubbly, or
Right. Yeah.
cologne, you're kind of smelly too. You can be that straightforward,
For
but
sure.
don't do it with shame. Just do it with
Right.
like, I want this to be good. Make it
Yeah.
good. I have
Yeah.
faith in you. I believe in you. Do it like this. And then you take so much anxiety out of it and the
Mhm.
fumbling goes away. But in the beginning, you should also be able to have fun and laugh and try new things and go, well, that's not working, is it? And that's okay
Right.
because
Right.
we're not experts. And I don't think we
No.
ever will be, but we do
No.
develop an understanding and we can hear each other's bodies harmonies and we can play on that, but we
Yeah.
have the talking.
We have to talk about it. We can't assume you for
We froze. Wait,
Oh, there you are.
okay.
Okay, there you are.
I heard you say we assume.
We assume and we can't read each other's
Oh yeah.
minds, right? And so like maybe you had a past sexual experience with someone where they liked it when you did this a certain way or
Yeah.
but now your current partner doesn't like that. You
But
can't.
you're not supposed to talk about what you did with other partners. That's like a rule with so many people, I think. And
And you don't necessarily have to
yeah,
if that's a boundary that makes somebody insecure or uncomfortable or whatever. But in your mind, like in my mind, if I know that something went a certain way with another partner, and I'm
yeah,
going to just do the exact same thing with my husband and assume that's going to work,
yeah.
he's a different person.
Right. And we have to say, do you like this? Or there's something I
Exactly.
want to try on you.
Right.
And a lot of
Something.
the problem is too, is when a spouse does introduce something new, then the other partner is like, where'd you learn how to do that? And we get upset. And I think, no, just your wife is, or your husband is curious and pleasing your
Right.
body. Like,
Right.
don't,
I know.
don't make them feel bad and question them and give them a grand inquisition. Cause like I said, I was a seasoned lover before I got married. So obviously my husband knew
Hmm.
I was going to try things that I'd probably already tried on other men, and he the same with other women. And that wasn't something we hated each other for. It was like,
But
oh, well,
because there
she
was
liked
this,
this. Well,
yeah.
oh, I kind of like it, and okay, sure.
No, I think if a white, well, where did you learn how to do that? And blah, 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 that's her insecurity.
Yeah,
That's her crap. And this
yeah,
is, we all do this. We all project our shit onto our partners.
yeah,
But like, that's where I would want the husband to say, sweetheart, this is your shit.
yeah,
Deal
yeah.
with it. Now lie
Yes,
down and enjoy,
yes.
like,
Just doesn't
right?
matter where it came from. Does it feel good? Are
Right.
you
Like,
liking it?
get over yourself. I'm not
Yes.
cheating. I'm not like, whatever. Just
Yeah.
like enjoy. Get
Yeah,
over yourself.
because
Yeah.
we want newness, and that's what keeps it alive. Like if we're doing the same old freaking position over and over.
And that's where pornography can be useful,
Yes, I
right? Is like,
agree.
let's explore. Let's bring, not all the time, but let's do
Yeah.
some research. Like, let's figure this out.
Yeah, and you can choose whatever porn you want to look at. So if you're worried
Right.
that porn is going to be too aggressive, yeah, there are some kinky things out there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
my highest recommendation is if you want to make sure your porn is safe and ethical, you pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
You look for feminist porn, you look for even gay porn seems to be less raunchy and less violent. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
that's just my advice, just from what I've learned. But if you want to make sure you're getting better porn, you pay for it. And it's
Yeah.
cleaner and it's not violent and it's not demeaning. It doesn't have to be
Right.
objectifying.
Right.
There's one
Right.
thing I want to say about the objectification that
Okay.
I want people to know is what I believe about Eros is outside of Eros. when we are wanting or lusting or desiring for anything, it
Mm-hmm.
is purely from an objective standpoint. We're looking at this thing as an object that we want. It is through eros, it is through eroticism that we take that object and we turn it into the subject of our existence.
Uh-huh.
That's how that love transforms. And so when people say things like, well, doing it in these positions or watching porn or doing this or doing that objectifies. No, your subject is love. Eros is the subject of love. And what you're doing is you're making that object mean something. You're putting meaning into it. And so when my husband wants to do different things with me, it's not because I'm just a body part that he wants to do whatever with. And that's not what the gist of it is for a lot of people. I'm not saying there aren't creepy people out there.
Sure, of course,
They are
of course.
underdeveloped people that need some help, but
Mm-hmm.
we have to. I used to say, I want to be objectified. I want to be the thing my husband desires. I want all of this to be the
Right.
only thing that turns him on. But
Absolutely.
I'm not just an object. I am the subject of his desire and his love.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to get past this objectification thing. I think whatever powers and principalities of the society that influence the negative took this way of doing things so that we could be a more individualized collective of people, and that we could, whatever you want to blame patriarchy and misogyny on, but we have to get away from that sort of thinking. When a man wants all of you, or when a woman wants all of you, they want to make you their subject. And I think
Right.
that's where the power of eroticism is. It takes object to subject form and it makes it meaningful, and it's a connection. It's like a true, authentic, divine connection. And so we need
Mm-hmm.
to work towards getting away from seeing the body as an object and sex as an object, and realize it's part of the subjectivity of the connection
Yes.
and
Yes.
why it's very important. I'm just an advocate for sex too, though. I mean, sex
Well, I
makes
know,
me
and
happy.
so am I. But I think where it gets objectified is through, sexual abuse, right?
Yeah.
Um, and when in pornography, there's this belief, and it could be true. I don't know. I've heard a lot of women in porn movies love what they do. They don't
Yeah.
feel like they're being
They
objectified.
feel like they're
But
being
that's
empowering.
right. But that's what the message has been, right? That if young boys like have been exposed, then they're being taught you can't watch porn because it's objectifying to women, and that's somebody's daughter or sister or
Yeah.
whatever on that screen, and there's all that shame. And it's so interesting to hear porn stars talk and give their stories, and how much they, like you said, are empowered and
Yeah.
feel really good about the work that they do. So there's just always more than just one side to
Yeah.
these things.
Yeah.
But I think that's where objectification did, come from, and where women or men or boys or girls do get objectified is when they're sexually abused,
Yeah.
right? And used for someone else to exert power
Mhm.
over or whatever. And so, but when you're understanding love and relationship, that's, like you're saying, that's not objectification. That is saying, yes, you as a person are an object, but I am loving you.
Yeah.
That's not objectifying you.
Yeah.
So it's just really, you always have to look at all these different sides and layers to all of this.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
so many layers.
I agree.
So it's not black and white.
No, no. And one bit of advice for one person is never for everybody.
Exactly.
And that's such a
Exactly.
struggle in our society, is you see these books and you see this advice and they're like, and a lot of people will say, well, this is the way it is. Well, no, that was the way it was for that author and that author's clients and
Mm-hmm.
those patients. But
Mm-hmm.
you're just supposed
Right.
to kind of peel that back and think about it a little bit deeper. And that's a scary thing about, like, I think what I do too is I don't want people to think my own experience is the method of application that you're supposed to take, because I had a
Right.
different entire history. There's no way
Totally.
that could
Totally.
do that. But if we're
Right.
more willing to talk about things and
Yeah.
have discussions like this about eros and eroticism and just our curiosities and confusions about sex, then we can kind of take away the fear and the shame that we're projecting outward into
Right.
society, and meet people individually so that individual couples can then have their own bit of discussion and discovery with one another. I just don't want people to think we're those type of people that are like, you should all watch porn now. Everybody go watch porn and go get a vibrator. Although I wouldn't recommend a vibrator. I was reading about vibrators, and apparently they can wear down the walls of your labia and just make you numb. And I was like,
Interesting.
I read that and I'm like, we're done with vibrators, Corey. Okay, they're bad. And he's like, what's going on? And so I had to tell him, but and this whole time I'm watching Grace and Frankie, they're selling vibrators, and I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
that's
they're
hilarious.
selling vibrators to the most at-risk women for the thinning, like it's for the elderly.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
yeah.
no, not according to the science I just read. Don't do that. So that's really
hilarious.
But that's my little side note anecdote. There you go.
Thanks for sharing that.
Don't use a vibrator. Use a tongue. No.
That should be a bumper sticker.
Yes. Well, I would just like to wrap it there.
Okay, hun.
This has been fun. Ask Dr. G segment. I hope next time we have people join us, but
we'll open it up to the men.
Man, they will be there in a heartbeat.
Okay,
honestly, there were so many men interested, so that's what we're going to do. But this will be another Recorded Conversations episode.
Awesome.
And just thank you again, Dr. Lesley Goth.
Thank you.